sorry, Mr. Woody. I just can't sign that contract. Oh, I'd like to supply you, and the prices you have offered, they're fine. But how do I know they'll stick? How do I know our whole price scale won't be thrown out the window tomorrow? I could be stuck with a 20-year commitment to supply my product at prices I have no control over. That's not right, Mr. Woody. It's not my idea of our free American economic system.
I think he's got a good point, and that's why I'm here. My name is Bill Cochran. As a general thing, gas fields and pipelines are as far from my life as they probably are from yours. But the principle of free competition, well, that's something else. Freedom is important to me, as it is to you and to every American. Today, our economic freedom is in danger because of an unprecedented interpretation of our Natural Gas Act. I'd like to bring you the story straight from the lips of some of the people actually involved. But first, a little background on what natural gas is all about. Like oil, natural gas is found in this country mainly in the Southwest, anywhere from 1 to 4 miles down on the earth. Some of it, about 1/3, is produced simultaneously with oil. The rest comes from wells producing only gas. The natural gas industry is divided into 3 separate parts. First, getting the gas out of the ground, which of course includes finding it and processing it for marketing. Second, transporting the gas in giant pipelines to distant parts of the country. And third, delivery of the gas by local utility companies to homeowners and industrial users. The prices charged by the utility company to the consumer and by the pipeline to the utility company have long been under government regulation, since a pipeline or a utility is usually the only supplier in its particular area. In other words, it has an exclusive market. No such regulation has up to now been applied to the producers of gas. To begin with, they operate in a business which is highly competitive. 5,000 of them are in keen competition with each other. First, in exploring for gas or oil, which is well known to be one of the greatest financial risks in business. And secondly, to sell their product where they certainly have no exclusive market. Up till now, therefore, our gas producers have been allowed to engage in free, healthy competition. And during that time, the search for new supplies has expanded. Last summer, however, federal authority was stretched to include all producers of natural gas, big and little. Suddenly, gas producers find themselves classified as and regulated as public utility companies if they sell to interstate pipelines. How do they feel about it? Well, let's ask a producer. Here's John Kelly of Roswell, New Mexico. John, what do you say?
The way it looks to me, we're in trouble. You, me, all of us. Maybe the best way to explain is to take this well we're working right here. I picked this particular corner of New Mexico because I'd gone over my maps and surveys and geological reports, and I figured there ought to be gas here, about 7,500 feet down. So I went to my bank and my business friends, and I finally got together enough capital to buy a lease and to contract for a drilling rig. Like I said, I figured there was gas or oil or both. The geology looked right. But the thing about this business, you really never know what's down there till you drill. I'm not complaining. Everybody knows you're bucking heavy odds. Actually, only 1 chance out of 9 to hit every time you go after new oil or gas reserves. And you do a lot of searching and maybe risk your fool neck a few times a year. But there's always the chance that the well you're working on right now will be the big one, the one you've hoped for, dreamed about. That's the kind of a guy I am, and that's the kind of business I'm in, wildcatting. And when you finally do hit that 1 out of 9 long shot, if you don't have a free hand in marketing the gas, what's the point? Who wants to play against a stacked deck? I tell you, Mr. Cochran, I started out a long time ago as an independent producer. I like both ends of that label, not just the producer part, but the independent. The part that means I'm free. Free to win, free to lose. But if government controls are going to dictate the conditions I work under, I can't afford those 1 in 9 odds.
I'll have to get out.
Any circumstances that force producers to stop exploring, whether they're big companies, little companies, or individuals like John Kelly, well, that would be bad news, because we need new gas supplies to meet the steadily increasing demand in our country. And without an assured supply, the pipelines can't make plans to expand their services. Everett Woody is superintendent of a pipeline company. He'll tell you what this may mean to you.
See that area marked off on the map? There are hundreds of thousands of people there waiting for natural gas. We'd like to enlarge our lines into those areas, help build a future where we can get gas to everybody who wants it. But we can't do it.
Why not, Mr. Woody?
Because in order to plant a pipeline, you've got to have a long-range supply of gas lined up. And there just won't be that much gas. The producers won't have it. Why should they go on exploring if the price is set by the Federal Power Commission and the producer has no idea where that price will be fixed? It gives him nothing to work on. I think this whole notion of regulating the field producer is dead wrong. Nothing like it has ever been done before in America, not in all our 179 years of history. Government has no right to interfere in a free competitive business that's serving the public well. Government control of free production of gas is not in the public interest. Thousands of competing producers of gas have brought comforts and convenience to millions of people through low prices, high production, and expanding use.
What about the argument that if the rates charged by pipelines and local utilities are controlled, the price of gas at the well should be controlled too? Does that make any sense to you?
Not a nickel's worth. Our pipeline has a special franchise, a more or less exclusive territory. So there's some reason for arguing that it ought to be regulated. Same thing goes for the local utility. But the field producer, he's in a wide open competition on the market, and he's selling a commodity, not a public service. A commodity for which, incidentally, he gets only a very small fraction of the householder's gas dollar. About only 10 cents out of every consumer dollar, and he has to pay all his costs out of this. The other 90 cents of it goes for service charges, transportation, and distribution that are already regulated. So there's no sense in any talk about saving money for the housewife by regulating the field producer. All he's going to do is reduce the gas supply, and you know what that means.
It's not just the housewife who counts on natural gas. Industry uses it for fueling power plants, heating metals, and as a raw material for petrochemical products like nylon, plastics, and fertilizers. Yes, natural gas is a vital part of this country's well-being. Already going into 25 million homes, supplying 1/4 of our total energy requirements. Sure, it would be tragic if this flow were to be cut off or lost, but there is something bigger at stake, the loss of which would be even more of a national disaster. That something is our free, competitive economic system. Let's hear some down-to-earth talk on this point from a man who lives and works close to the soil in Iowa.
My name is Dan MacArthur. I run a livestock grain farm here in North Iowa. This thing has been discussed pretty fully in the Farm Bureau, and pretty nearly every one of us feel the same. The way we see it, this idea of regulating the competitive producer just isn't common sense. I don't believe in federal price fixing when you already have a far better price regulator, competition. Because when you tell a man how much money he can get for his gas, that's going to have a lot to do with how much he can afford to produce and how fast. Once you got the government controlling his production and his prices, it might as well just step in and take over his whole business officially, because that's what it'll be doing anyway. That kind of interference just isn't right. It doesn't belong in this country. Freedom's what the people came over here for, personal freedom. The right for every single one of us to get out and do the best he can for himself, as long as he doesn't cheat anybody. So it looks to me like this had better be stopped now.
Along about here, some of you may be wondering how this natural gas situation ever got into such a legal tangle. John Howley has been practicing law for the past 25 years. How about it, Mr. Howley?
There's no mystery about it. When you've got a Congress turning out hundreds of bills a year, some of them full of technicalities, there's bound to be a slip-up now and then. The miracle is it doesn't happen more often. You see, when the Gas Act was passed back in '38, there was no question about its purpose. Pipeline construction was expanding and creating a new interstate traffic in gas. Under our Constitution, this could not be supervised by any individual state. A federal law was needed. It was the interstate transportation of gas that Congress was concerned about regulating, not its production. To underline that, they wrote in a clause right up near the top of the bill, excluding production and gathering from any controls. Unfortunately, in spelling out the bill, somebody used a phrase about regulating all sales of gas in interstate commerce, and that's where the trouble started. There are some people who simply believe in federal regulation and want more of it. There are others who are uninformed about the ins and outs of the natural gas business, just don't understand the problem. Well, that phrase in the wording of the bill was seized upon by one group and another to try to bring the natural gas producer under regulation. These people appealed to the Federal Power Commission to back them up. The commission said no. 11 different times they said no. To help clear up the confusion at this point, Congress passed an amendment to the act, reaffirming the free status of the producer. But it was vetoed in 1950, and that's the way things stood till this latest interpretation by the Supreme Court. It wasn't a unanimous opinion, not by a long shot. It was a 5-3 decision with one justice not participating. But it was enough to bring all sales to interstate pipelines under federal control.
Thanks, Mr. Hawley. Now I'd like to have you meet Mr. Wilkes from Hartford, Connecticut, who has some ideas on this subject.
You're right, I have. I'm an oil jobber, an independent businessman. I sell gasoline for your car and heating oil for homes. And in my heating oil business, I'm in direct competition with the local natural gas utility. So you might think I'd be happy about all this, or at least shut up about it. No, sir. I don't want to get business that way. There's a principle involved here that's more important than any temporary advantage I might get. I'm talking about free competition, the principle that's enabled us to build the strongest economy and the highest standard of living on earth. Why do our people have good cars, decent homes, and well-fed children? Because millions of independent businessmen are competing freely, every one of them trying to turn out a product that's just a little better at a little lower cost. That system has brought abundance to our people, and I don't want to see it changed. I don't want the government running interference for me. I'd rather fight it out on equal terms with my competitors in the marketplace. And it goes beyond that. If the government can control gas production in peacetime, they can control any commodity. It'll be oil and coal next. And once you start pushing the producer around, where do you stop? They can pull in the farmer, the lumberman, and before you know it, there just won't be any private producers. Well, that's not for me, and I don't think it's for America.
Well, there it is, folks. The rest is up to you. If you're anything at all like me, you value our way of life. In so much of the world, things happen to people. Here in America, you, the people, make things happen. You, the people, are the government. Your Congress, your officials, exist only to carry out your orders. Whatever your opinion, make sure your voice is heard.